The clown returns. The photo. It started with a photo. It was the first week of summer, and the small town of Derry was unusually quiet. The kind of silence that feels like it's hiding something. No one paid much attention to it, except for Jamie, 14 years old, curious, and always digging into things others ignored. Jamie had a habit of exploring the attic of his grandparents' old house, especially now that his grandfather had passed and they were cleaning the place out. That afternoon, the air was thick with heat and dust. Jamie pushed open the creaky attic door, sending a puff of old air down the stairs. Sunlight streamed through the circular window, cutting a golden beam across forgotten boxes and furniture draped in white sheets. He stepped in, eyes scanning for something interesting. Books, old magazines, a box labeled Dad's school stuff. Jamie opened it, hoping to find comic books or something valuable. Instead, he found a brown leather scrapbook, thick and cracked with age. He opened it. The first few pages were full of family photos of his father as a kid, fishing with Grandpa, birthdays, a Halloween or two. But then, tucked between pages, a photo slipped out and fluttered to the floor. Jamie bent down to pick it up. It was a black and white photograph, slightly bent, with yellowed edges. In the picture were 5 kids, standing in a semicircle. They looked about Jamie's age. Behind them stood a man in a clown suit, pale makeup, big red nose, and an exaggerated smile painted across his lips. His eyes were wide, almost too wide. Jamie stared at it. He didn't recognize any of the kids, but the backdrop, it looked like Derry Park, right near the woods. There was something odd about the picture, though, not just the eerie clown. It was the date. He flipped it over. Derry Summer Festival, 1989. Jamie's stomach tightened. His father was born in 1980. That would make him about 9 years old in this photo. He rushed downstairs to ask his dad. "What photo?" his father asked, pausing as he folded laundry. "This one," Jamie said, holding it up. "Was this you?" His dad took one glance, and his face drained of color. His hands dropped the clothes. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice sharp. "It was in a scrapbook in the attic." His father didn't answer right away. He sat down slowly, still staring at the photo like it was a ghost. "I haven't seen this in over 30 years, he whispered. "Who's the clown?" Jamie asked. His dad looked up, swallowing hard. "We called him it. I don't know if it was a man or a thing, or, I don't know. We thought it was just a creepy old clown who worked the fair. He showed up every year when we were kids." "Did you know the other kids in the photo?" His dad nodded slowly. "All of them, except only 2 of us made it out of that summer." Jamie's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" His dad stood up, walked to the kitchen, and pulled a bottle of water from the fridge. He drank like someone who'd just run a mile. "There were 6 of us," he said finally. "That summer, one by one, kids started disappearing. No bodies, no clues, and always the same rumor. Someone saw a red balloon near where they vanished." Jamie was frozen. "I saw one of them," his dad said, quieter now. "I saw what it really looked like, just once. After that, I never talked about it again. None of us did. Not until now." Jamie looked down at the photo again. The clown seemed to be smiling wider than before. He blinked and looked again. "No change, just a trick of the light, right?" "Dad," Jamie asked, "why was this in your scrapbook? Why would you keep it?" His dad shook his head. "I didn't. That's what scares me." That night, Jamie couldn't sleep. He kept the photo on his desk, unsure why. Part of him wanted to burn it. Another part wanted answers. Around midnight, the silence in the house grew heavier. The kind of silence that isn't natural. The air felt colder, though the fan was still spinning overhead. He turned over in bed, trying not to look at the photo. That's when he heard it. Tap-a-tap-tap. It came from the window. Jamie sat up, slowly, His room was on the second floor. No one should be at the window. Tap-a-tap. He got up, heart pounding, and walked over. He pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. Just darkness and the pale reflection of himself in the glass. And something else, floating behind him in the reflection. A red balloon. He spun around, empty. The photo had slid off his desk. It was lying face down on the floor. Jamie picked it up with shaking hands. He turned it over again. This time, one of the kids was missing from the image. The next morning, Jamie ran back to the attic. He needed to see that scrapbook again. To make sense of any of this, he flipped through the page looking for anything about the missing kids. But where the photo had been was now blank. The page had been torn clean out. He heard footsteps behind him. It was his cousin Lizzie. "Jamie, breakfast is ready. What are you doing up here?" He hesitated, looking for something. "What's that in your hand?" Jamie hesitated, unsure if he should show her. "It's just a photo." She took it from him anyway. Her face twisted in confusion. "That's weird." "What?" "This kid. I swear I've seen him before." Jamie leaned in. "You have?" Lizzie nodded. "He used to live across from us. Tyler or something. He moved away when I was 7. Jamie's blood ran cold. He knew that name. Tyler Morgan. Disappeared in 2017. His photo had been on the bulletin board at school for months. Everyone said he ran away. Jamie pulled the photo closer. Now there were only 4 kids in it, and Tyler's smiling face was gone. "What the hell is this?" Lizzie whispered. Jamie didn't answer, because something was happening to the photo. It was changing before their eyes. The clown's head was turning, ever so slightly, toward the camera, and the eyes were looking directly at Jamie. They didn't go back to the attic after that, but the damage was already done. Over the next few days, Jamie started seeing red balloons in strange places. One was tied to the mailbox. Another floated just outside his classroom window. No one else seemed to notice them, not even the teachers. One night, he heard laughter in the hallway. Not his parents, not Lizzie. High-pitched, musical, almost like it came from a circus. He opened the door and nothing, but the photo was gone from his desk. In its place, a single, red balloon, tied in a perfect knot, floating without string. Jamie didn't know who to turn to. Not even his father would talk about it anymore. Every time he brought it up, his dad would shut down completely, muttering something about "we made a promise and never awaken it." But the clown didn't care about promises. It was back, and Jamie was its next target. The sewer voice. The summer sun hadn't yet broken through the thick gray clouds when Derry woke up to the news. A boy had gone missing. His name was Caleb Myers, 11 years old, a quiet, thoughtful kid who lived just a few streets down from Jamie. They weren't close, but they'd spoken a few times on the school bus. Caleb always had a book in his hands and preferred the company of stories over people. Now he was gone, vanished. His parents had called the police the night before when Caleb didn't come home from riding his bike. He had only gone out for a short ride, down toward the trail near the old waterworks near the storm drains. Jamie heard about it on the local morning news. A sick chill crawled over his skin as he looked out the window toward the woods. The same woods from the photo. The same area where the red balloons had started appearing. He didn't tell his parents. He couldn't. They already looked tired, worn from decades of silence about that summer. His dad especially seemed haunted. Since seeing the photo again, he barely spoke. He walked slower. His eyes darted at shadows. Jamie decided to go find Lizzie. She was the only one who believed him. They met at the park near the bike trail. The clouds hung low like heavy blankets. Jamie carried the old scrapbook with him, though he hadn't dared look inside again. "It's Caleb," Lizzie said before Jamie could speak. "You heard?" He nodded. "Near the storm drain." "That's what I heard too. They found his bike, just sitting there, nothing else. No blood, Jamie asked. Nope, no signs of a struggle, just gone. Jamie sat on the bench, staring at the dirt trail that wound through the trees. Remember what my dad said, he murmured, about the kids disappearing always near a red balloon? Lizzie didn't answer. She didn't have to. The look on her face said it all. Jamie opened the scrapbook and pulled out the photograph again. Only 3 kids remained in it now. The clown still stood in the center, but his face had changed. No longer just grinning. It now showed teeth rows of impossibly sharp teeth beneath smeared red lipstick. And in the corner of the image, small and nearly hidden behind a tree, was something new. A sewer grate. Lizzie noticed it too. That wasn't there before, she whispered. I know. They stared at it in silence, until something strange happened. Jamie heard it. A voice. Faint, low, almost like a whisper inside his mind. Jamie. He jerked his head up. What? Lizzie asked, startled. Did you hear that? Hear what? Jamie stood slowly, turning toward the edge of the woods. The voice came again, more distinct. Help me. It was Caleb's voice. Lizzie, Jamie whispered. He's calling me. Her eyes widened. Jamie, don't. But he was already walking, drawn by something deeper than fear, as if a string had been tied around his spine and was gently pulling him forward, toward the storm drain. It wasn't far, maybe a 5-minute walk through the trail, past overgrown bushes and faded trail markers. Jamie had been here a dozen times on his bike. It had always felt normal, safe. Now it felt like walking into a grave. The trees seemed darker here, quieter. Even the birds had gone silent. Jamie and Lizzie stood at the edge of the concrete embankment, where the drain opened up a wide black mouth just big enough for a child to crawl through. Rusty bars lined the front, but several were missing. The bicycle was still there. It lay on its side, one wheel slowly spinning in the breeze. Jamie stepped closer. That's when they heard it. Down here. Caleb's voice again, clearer this time, echoing from within the drain. Lizzie gasped, "Oh my God." Jamie dropped to his knees and peered inside. It was pitch black. "Caleb," he called. Silence. Then, "Help, I can't get out." It sounded wet, like someone struggling to speak through a mouthful of water. Lizzie grabbed his arm. "Jamie, this is exactly how they get you. This is what the clown does." He hesitated, but the voice called again. "Please, it's cold, Jamie, help me." Tears welled in Jamie's eyes. He wanted to run. He wanted to go home and lock his door and burn the photo. But if that voice really was Caleb, and if there was even a chance he was alive down there, he had to try. Jamie stood and looked around. A thick branch lay nearby, about the length of a broomstick. "I'm going in," he said. "Are you crazy?" "Just a little. I'll only crawl in a few feet, just to see." Jamie. But he was already on his hands and knees, flashlight in one hand, branch in the other. The moment he crossed the threshold, the air turned cold and damp, and the scent of mold hit him hard. His flashlight flickered. "Jamie." The voice came from deeper in the tunnel now, retreating, luring. He crawled in further, past a bend in the pipe. Lizzie stayed at the opening, her voice trembling. "Do you see anything?" "Not yet," Jamie called back. The tunnel curved again. Water trickled beneath him, soaking his knees. The walls narrowed. And then, something moved. At the edge of his light, just beyond reach, he saw it. A face, pale, wet, eyes hollow and black. It was smiling. Jamie screamed and scrambled backward, hitting his head on the pipe. The flashlight flew from his hand and rolled deeper into the drain, illuminating. Balloons, dozens of them, all red, floating silently inside the tunnel, as if suspended by some invisible force. And among them Caleb, or what was left of Caleb. His face was slack, eyes wide and unblinking, but his mouth opened, and from it came the clown's voice. "We all float down here, Jamie." Jamie turned and crawled as fast as he could. hands slipping on wet concrete, lungs burning with panic. He could hear it behind him, scraping, dragging, laughing. Lizzie's hand grabbed his arm and yanked him out just as the voice screamed, "Come back!" They fell in a heap on the grass. Behind them, the drain went silent. The bicycle was gone. They didn't speak for a long time, just lay there, side by side, staring at the sky as the clouds drifted slowly overhead. "I saw him," Jamie said finally. Lizzie nodded. "I heard him too," she whispered. The voice changed. "It wasn't him." "I know." Jamie sat up, heart still pounding. "We need to find the others." "Others?" He nodded. "The kids in the photo. The ones still left. If this thing is back, it's coming for all of us." Lizzie looked afraid. Not just scared of the clown, but scared of what they'd have to do next. What if it already got them? Then we're the last ones left. Jamie pulled the photo from his pocket. 2 kids remained. Just 2. And the clown's hand was now resting on Jamie's shoulder in the picture. The red balloon. The next morning, it started with a balloon. Jamie opened the front door to get the newspaper, though no one in the house really read it anymore. And there it was. A single red balloon floated at eye level, tied to the brass handle of the mailbox. It moved slightly in the windless air, swaying gently from side to side. Shiny, bright, unmistakably wrong. Jamie froze. His mind flashed back to the drain, the face, the eyes, Caleb's voice that wasn't Caleb's. He stepped back inside, locking the door behind him, his heart pounding. The balloon remained on the other side of the glass door, still bobbing almost as if waiting for him to come back out. He turned from the door and nearly collided with his father. "Jamie," his father asked, "you okay?" Jamie hesitated. "There's a balloon on our mailbox." The color drained from his dad's face. "Red?" Jamie nodded. His father didn't speak for a long time. Then he muttered, "It's begun again." "What's begun?" But his dad had already walked away, disappearing into the garage without answering. Jamie stood in the hallway, paralyzed. The house didn't feel safe anymore. Every corner felt like a hiding place. Every window seemed like something or someone could be watching through it. He went upstairs, shut his door, and pulled the curtains. Only when the room was dark again did he feel the tension leave his chest. He pulled out the photograph. One child left in the image, a girl with glasses, standing stiffly beside the clown. Lizzie had already looked through old yearbooks and newspaper records. The girl's name was Sophie Mendez, born in 1979, moved away in 1991, right after the last reported disappearance that year. "We have to find her," Jamie had said. Now it felt more urgent than ever. The clown wasn't just back, it was hunting, and the red balloons were its calling cards. By noon, there were balloons all over town. Jamie saw one tied to the stop sign at the end of the block. Another floated above a parked police cruiser outside the grocery store. A third drifted silently above the playground swing set. People noticed them, but no one really reacted. Some laughed, some joked. "Someone's doing a weird art project," they said. "Must be a prank." But Jamie knew better. It wasn't a prank. It was a warning, and it was getting closer. He met up with Lizzie outside the town library, where she'd spent the last 2 hours digging through old news clippings. "You were right," she said as soon as she saw him. "Sophie Mendez. She lived on the west side of Derry, over on Greeley Street. Her family moved out of town after her brother disappeared." "Did they ever find him?" Jamie asked. Lizzie shook her head. "He was last seen near the fairgrounds. He was 13. She was 12. Same summer your dad and his friends made that pact." Jamie glanced around nervously. "Let's go, before it finds her first." They reached Sophie's old house just after 3 p.m. The neighborhood felt different here, older, quieter, with big trees lining the street and cracked sidewalks full of weeds. The house at the corner of Greeley and Oak stood tall and gray, its windows shut and curtains drawn. A faded for rent sign hung crookedly on the gate. "She's not here anymore," Jamie said. "No," Lizzie replied. "But maybe someone knows where she went." They tried the house next door. A woman in her 60s answered, her eyes tired but kind. "Sophie Mendez," she said, frowning. "That's a name I haven't heard in years." Jamie stepped forward. "We're doing a project on old residents of Derry. Do you know where she went?" The woman hesitated. "I remember her. She was a quiet girl, sweet. After her brother vanished, her parents pulled her out of school, packed up and left. I think they moved to Bangor, maybe even further." Jamie's stomach sank. "So there's no way to reach her?" The woman shook her head. "Not that I know of, dear." Lizzie thanked her politely, and the door closed behind them. They stood in silence on the porch, unsure what to do next. "We're running out of time," Jamie said. Lizzie turned slowly toward the street and froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Jamie." He looked. A red balloon floated in the middle of the road. Then another, and another. Within moments, a dozen red balloons were drifting silently toward them. As if guided by invisible strings, they hovered just above the ground, bobbing gently in unison. Jamie grabbed Lizzie's arm. "Run." They bolted down the sidewalk, feet slapping against the pavement. The balloons followed, gliding without wind, without resistance. They didn't make a sound. That was the worst part. No wind, no rustling, just silencing the unbearable sense that something was just behind them, just about to grab their shoulders. They rounded a corner and dove into an alley between two apartment buildings. The balloons didn't follow. They waited there, gasping for breath, backs pressed to the brick wall. Jamie looked up and gasped. One of the windows above them, a pale face, staring down, not blinking, not moving. He couldn't tell if it was a mask, a reflection, or the face vanished. Jamie grabbed Lizzie's hand and pulled her back onto the street. They had to get home. Back in Jamie's room, they locked the door and shut the curtains. The world outside had gone quiet again, too quiet. Lizzie pulled out her phone and sat on the edge of the bed. "What if we don't need Sophie?" she said. "What if we're the only ones left who can stop it?" Jamie stared at the photograph. Only the clown remained now, no children. Just a grinning, painted mouth stretched to wide, eyes to knowing. The background behind the clown had changed too. It was no longer the woods. It was Jamie's house. He dropped the photo, horrified. "What is it?" Lizzie asked. "It's here," he whispered. "It knows where I live." A knock came from downstairs. They both jumped. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks on the front door. Then, a voice. "Jamie, I brought your balloon." Jamie's heart stopped. Lizzie mouthed, "Don't move." They didn't. More knocks. "Jamie, come float with us." The voice was childlike, sing-song, and wrong. Jamie reached under his bed and pulled out a crowbar he kept from helping his dad with shelves. "I'm not running anymore," he said quietly. Lizzie's eyes widened. "You're going down there." "I have to." He opened the bedroom door slowly. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from the nightlight in the bathroom. Creak. One step at a time, he descended the stairs, crowbar in hand. The knocking had stopped. The house was deadly silent. He reached the door. There was no one there. But tied to the doorknob, another red balloon. He popped it with the crowbar, and it made no sound. No air, no hiss, just a strange whisper that lingered in the room afterward. Then, movement. From behind. He turned. Too late. A flash of white, a hand on his throat, and then, darkness. He woke up in the basement, alone. The air was freezing, wet. A low growl echoed from the shadows. Then a voice. "You don't remember, but we met before." Jamie sat up slowly. Across the room stood the clown, no longer smiling, now snarling, eyes sunken, teeth glistening. "You were just a baby then," it said. I left you a gift, in your dreams. Jamie's lips trembled. Why me? The clown tilted its head. Because your fear is sweet, and you remember, that makes you dangerous. Jamie raised the crowbar. The clown laughed. A horrible, echoing sound. Go ahead, hit me. Jamie lunged. The crowbar sliced through air through nothing. The clown had vanished. But behind him, balloons, dozens of them, and voices, familiar ones. Jamie, come play. Join us. The air filled with whispers and laughter. He ran, through the dark, through the voices, until he saw a door. He burst through it and collapsed on the floor of his room. Lizzie screamed. He was covered in water, his eyes wide, his voice trembling. It's not just here, he gasped. It's everywhere. The forgotten friend. The dreams started the next night. Jamie had barely closed his eyes when the images began flooding in shadows moving behind trees. A tricycle lying on its side, laughter echoing in the distance. At first, it was nothing more than noise, fragmented and strange. Then came the memory. He was standing in a small clearing behind his old preschool. The one he hadn't thought about in years. It was summer, and the sky was bright. On the bench beside him sat a boy about his age, pale-skinned, with shaggy black hair and round wire-frame glasses. The boy smiled and handed Jamie a lollipop. Jamie took it, confused. He didn't remember this. Not until now. In the dream, the boy spoke. We were best friends, remember? Jamie blinked. The name hovered in his mind like a fog that wouldn't lift. Who are you? He asked. The boy looked hurt. You forgot me? Jamie tried to answer, but his voice vanished. Suddenly, the sky turned black. The trees withered, and behind the boy, a red balloon rose. The boy stood slowly, his face shifted, lips stretching to wide, eyes turning glassy and hollow. I waited for you, Jamie, but you left me. Jamie screamed, and woke up in bed, drenched in sweat. The next morning, Jamie said nothing at breakfast. His father avoided eye contact. His mother looked worried but didn't ask questions. Only Lizzie noticed the dark circles under his eyes as they walked to the library. You didn't sleep, she said. I had a dream, Jamie replied. About someone I used to know, or maybe not. Who? I don't know his name. He described the boy, pale, dark hair, glasses. Something in Lizzie's face shifted. That sounds like Evan, she said slowly. Jamie froze. Who? Evan Sharp. He lived across the street from you when you were little, before your family moved across town. Jamie shook his head. I don't remember anyone named Evan. Well, he remembered you, she said. You guys used to play together every day. I remember your mom telling mine about it. But he just disappeared. Jamie stopped walking. Disappeared? Lizzie nodded. There were rumors that his parents left town, that something happened. No one really knew. But after that, your family moved away. Your mom said you kept having nightmares. Jamie's pulse quickened. I think he's back. Lizzie looked uneasy, as in Olive. Jamie didn't answer, because deep down, he didn't think Evan was alive at all. Not anymore. That afternoon, they returned to the clearing behind the old preschool. It was still there, overgrown, half swallowed by weeds, but recognizable. The wooden bench was broken, its boards warped with time. A rusted merry-go-round creaked in the breeze. Jamie stared at it, memories tugging at the edges of his mind. He saw Flash's muddy sneakers, fireflies, a shared sandwich, laughter, and a voice. You left me. The wind shifted. Jamie turned it and saw a drawing nailed to the nearest tree. It was a child's sketch, crude, scribbled with crayon. Two stick figures held hands. One wore glasses. Behind them loomed a larger figure-round head. Wide smile, red balloon. Lizzie took a step back. He's still here. They turned to leave but stopped. A boy stood at the edge of the clearing, about Jamie's age. Dark hair, wire glasses, Smiling. Jamie froze. Evan? The boy nodded. Jamie's breath caught. You're real? Evan tilted his head. You forgot me. Jamie stepped forward, heart racing. I didn't mean to. Evan frowned. That's what they all say. Behind him, something shimmered in the air like heat waves. Then the light bent, and a shape emerged. The clown. Jamie grabbed Lizzie's arm and ran. They didn't stop until they were back on the street, panting and terrified. Jamie looked back. No one followed. But something had returned. Something that had once lived inside his forgotten memories. Back home, Jamie locked himself in his room. He spread out everything they had: photos, newspaper clippings, sketches, his dad's old scrapbook. Then he opened the drawer where he'd hidden the original photo. His hands trembled as he took it out. Now there was no one left in the image. Just the clown. And one more thing. A new figure stood beside him. A boy with dark hair, glasses. Evan. The photo was changing. It had never been a still image. It was a warning. Jamie felt it in his chest now, a gnawing fear. He hadn't just forgotten Evan. He'd abandoned him. And Evan had been taken by it. The nightmares worsened. Every night, Jamie dreamed of that clearing. And every night, Evan stood a little closer. His voice grew colder. You promised we'd be friends forever. Jamie would try to run, but the trees would close in, branches like fingers dragging him back. The red balloons would rise from the ground like weeds, and the laughter, that horrible, guttural laughter, would echo through the sky. Each morning, Jamie woke more exhausted than the last, until the night Lizzie called him in a panic. Jamie, he came to my house. What? He was in my backyard, just staring. I turned on the light, and he was gone. But he left a note. She held it up on the video call. A crayon drawing of Jamie, alone, surrounded by red balloons, and beneath it, in shaky handwriting, he floats next. Jamie dropped the phone. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone connected to him. The clown was feeding on the past and guilt, on forgotten promises, on childhood bonds left to rot. And Evan was the doorway. Jamie knew what he had to do. That night, he returned to the clearing, alone. He brought no flashlight, no camera, only the old photo, and the scrapbook his father had hidden for decades. Evan was waiting, sitting on the broken bench. Behind him, red balloons hung from the branches like fruit. Why did you leave me? Evan asked softly. Jamie stepped closer. Because I was scared. I didn't understand. I was just a kid. We were both kids. I'm sorry. Evan's eyes shimmered. You let me go, he whispered. And now he owns me. Jamie swallowed hard. Let me help you. A low rumble echoed through the clearing. Branches creaked. The sky turned gray. The clown stepped into view. 7 feet tall. White skin like rotting porcelain. Eyes glowing yellow. It smiled. He's mine now. Jamie stood his ground. No, he was my friend. The clown faded deep, wheezing sound like air escaping from a balloon. You all forget. You all run. And when you do, I come back. Jamie opened the scrapbook. Inside were dozens of pages, all blank. Until now. They began to fill. Photos, names, memories. Every child who had vanished. Every friend forgotten. Including Evan. Jamie whispered, I remember you. I remember our secret handshake. The game we made up. The rock we buried behind the fence. Evan blinked. Tears welled in his eyes. I remember our handshake too. The air shifted. The clown snarled. No. The balloons popped by one until the clearing echoed with sharp cracks. Evan stepped forward. No more, he said. The clown lunged. But Jamie raised the scrapbook and light burst from the pages. A sound like wind rushing through a tunnel filled the air. The clown shrieked. Its body twisted, contorted. Its limbs jerking unnaturally as the light pulled it back into the photo. Into the memory. It clawed at the air. Then, Silence. Just the wind, the broken bench, and Jamie. Alone. Evan was gone. But not like before. This time, Jamie felt it. Peace, not emptiness. Back home, Jamie sat with Lizzie under the porch light. "I don't think it's over," she said. Jamie nodded. "It never really is. But we remember now. That matters." Jamie held up the scrapbook. Every page was filled. No more blanks. No more silence. "Yeah," he said quietly, "it matters." A breeze passed. The wind chime above them rattled softly. Jamie looked out into the street. No balloons. Not tonight. But he would always remember the face of the forgotten friend. And the price of forgetting. The library incident. The library always felt safe. Quiet, bright, peaceful. Or at least, it used to. For Lizzie, it had been a second home. She'd spent hours there every week reading, studying, hiding from the chaos of life. The scent of old paper and polished wood made her feel grounded. But today, something felt off. The minute she stepped through the double glass doors, the air seemed colder than usual. Still. Too still, as though the walls were holding their breath. She brushed it off. Jamie had asked her to meet him there after school to look through old town records. If there were any more clues about the clowner, if Anthe might be buried in dusty archives no one had touched in years. She walked to the front desk. No one was there. "Hello," she called. Silence. Maybe they were in the back. Lizzie made her way toward the local history section. She knew the way by heart past the mystery novels, through the aisle of encyclopedias, into a tucked-away corner marked Dairy Archives. And there, waiting for her, was the massive, leather-bound Dairy Daily Chronicle Index, 19,500,000. Jamie wasn't there, but the book was open. Strange. She looked around, then called again. "Jamie?" No answer. The library was dead silent. She glanced at the page left open. It was from 1989, the summer of the original disappearances. 6 names listed as missing. All children. All under 15. Below that, an article titled, "Mass Hysteria or Malevolent Force. Derry's Disappearing Youth." She shivered. Just then, a loud thump echoed from somewhere behind her. Lizzie spun around. Nothing. Just rows of shelves, books resting neatly. She turned back to the article. Another thump, closer. She stepped out from the reading desk and peered down the aisle. Still nothing. But then a book fell. From the top shelf. No breeze, no one near it. It hit the carpet with a soft thud. She walked over slowly, knees trembling. The book's title sent a chill down her spine. The Carnival of Shadows, Paranormal Events in Maine. As she reached to pick it up, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then went out. Darkness swallowed the library. Lizzie froze. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Then came the whisper. "Lizzie." A soft, raspy voice, somewhere between a breath and a hiss. She turned in place, backing toward the main aisle, her phone already in her hand. She switched on the flashlight. A beam of weak light cut through the dark. She turned slowly, scanning the shelves. Silence again. She looked down at her phone to call Jamie. The battery icon blinked red. It was at 84% earlier. Now it showed 1%. Then the screen died. Her only light gone. She swallowed the panic rising in her throat. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "Get out. Just get out." She began walking slowly, feeling along the shelves. Then the books started falling. 1, 2, 10, 15. Thud, slam, crash. All around her, volumes launched themselves off the shelves, flying from impossible angles, as though invisible hands were hurling them with force. She ducked and ran toward the entrance, but when she reached the front doors, they were gone. Not closed, not locked, gone. Just a wall now, solid drywall and bookshelves. She gasped, spinning around. The library had changed. The layout was wrong. the furniture different. The walls no longer held posters or calendars, just peeling wallpaper and old oil paintings of people she didn't recognize. She was somewhere else, trapped. And then, from behind her, came a familiar voice. "Found you." She turned slowly. The clown stood at the end of the aisle, 7 feet tall, eyes glowing in the dark. Its red lips curled into a grin that stretched to wide, to thin. And in its hands, a book, bound in stitched flesh, inked in red. Lizzie stumbled back, knocking over a cart of encyclopedias. The clown took a step forward. Books began flying again, this time in perfect formation, circling above its head like vultures. Pages fluttered open, and from them came voices, children's voices. "We floated too. She'll float next. Join us, Lizzie." "No," she screamed, bolting between shelves. The clown didn't follow. It didn't need to. The library was no longer just a building. It was a maze, and it belonged to it. Somewhere, far from that twisted maze of books, Jamie's phone vibrated. He'd fallen asleep in the school library, head on his open notebook. The sun outside had dipped behind the trees. He checked his phone. A message. From Lizzie. "I'm here, come quick." Jamie frowned. He hadn't seen her all day. She was supposed to meet him hours ago. He tried to call. No answer. He rushed out the doors. 10 minutes later, he arrived at the public library. It looked normal. "Come." He stepped inside. The receptionist looked up from her desk. "Welcome. Closing in 20 minutes. Jamie scanned the room. No Lizzie. No sign she had ever been there. He asked the receptionist if anyone else had come in today. "No one but a group of elderly chess players this morning," she replied. Jamie walked into the dairy archives section. The massive index was closed, untouched, but something caught his eye. A trail of loose pages on the floor. He followed them. One by one, they led him to a side door marked "Staff Only." It was slightly ajar. Jamie hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside was a narrow stairwell, lit only by a flickering emergency light. The air was cold, and naturally so. As he descended, the stairwell twisted too many turns for the size of the building. Then the light went out completely. Jamie used his phone flashlight, and there it was. A hallway made of bookshelves. Impossible, shifting walls of stacked books. Paperbacks and hardcovers pressed together to form a tunnel. He stepped inside. The air smelled like mildew and ink. And something else. Rot. "Lizzie," he called. The only answer came from the walls. "We all read down here." The shelves groaned. Books began to bleed thick, red ink oozing between the pages. Jamie broke into a run. The tunnel twisted again. Voices screamed from open books as he passed. "Lizzie, float with me." He turned a corner and saw her, huddled beneath a desk, eyes wide with terror. "Lizzie." She looked up. "Jamie." He grabbed her hand. "We need to go, now." The shelves groaned again, closing in. The clown stepped through the wall of books like it was made of mist. "Leaving so soon," it purred. Its eyes burned brighter than ever. Books flew toward them like knives. Jamie shielded Lizzie with his body. Then he remembered. The photo. He pulled it from his pocket. The clown hissed. Its grin faltered. Jamie raised it like a weapon. "You're not real," he said. "You're a story that should have ended." The clown snarled, lunging. Jamie shoved the photo forward. There was a sound like tearing paper. The clown's body rippled, distorted, then began to fold into itself like the pages of a closing book. It screamed. Books flew from the shelves, pages swirling like a hurricane. And then, silence. The library returned to normal. Jamie and Lizzie stood in the quiet aisle. Dust floated in the air. The lights were back on. The front desk was visible again. They stumbled out, breathing hard, hands still clenched. Outside, the sun was rising. They had been trapped all night, but somehow no one had noticed. No one else had even known they were gone. As they walked home, Lizzie looked at Jamie. "You think that's it?" Jamie looked at the photo. Now, the clown was crouched, its face cracked, its eyes closed. "We heard it," he said, "but it's not done." Lizzie shivered. "Then neither are we." The bloody message. It happened on a Tuesday morning. The town was quiet, still trying to convince itself that nothing was wrong, that the red balloons were just an elaborate prank, that the missing children had simply run away, that the shadows moving in the corners of their eyes were just tricks of the light. But Jamie knew better. So did Lizzie. And by the time Jamie's cousin Michael called in a panic, they both understood what was coming next. Jamie answered on the first ring. "Jamie," Michael's voice trembled. Something's wrong. It's in my house." Jamie stood up so fast his chair toppled behind him. "What happened?" Michael's voice was strained, frantic. "There's something written in my bathroom." Jamie was already putting on his shoes. "Stay there. Don't go backin'. I'm coming." He didn't wait for Lizzie. He sprinted the entire way. Michael lived just 3 blocks down, with his mom and little brother. His house had always been full of life video games, barking dogs, the smell of popcorn in the air. Today, it was dead silent. Michael met Jamie at the front door, pale and shaking. "Upstairs," he whispered. Jamie followed him up the narrow steps to the second floor. The air felt heavier the higher they went, colder. The hallway light flickered, even though it had been replaced last week. Michael pointed to the bathroom door. Jamie pushed it open. The first thing he noticed was the smell, metallic, thick, like rust and iron. Then he saw the message. "We all float down here," scrawled across the bathroom mirror in dripping, bright red blood. It stretched from one end of the glass to the other, the letters jagged and uneven. The sink beneath was stained. The faucet continued to drip. Michael spoke quietly behind him. "No one's been in there all morning. Mom's at work. I just woke up and found it like this." Jamie stepped forward. He reached toward the mirror but stopped when he noticed something else. In the lower right corner, just beneath the main message, a single name had been added. "Michael." Jamie turned to him. "It's marked you." Michael looked ready to collapse. That's when Lizzie arrived. She burst into the hallway, out of breath. I saw the Callie ran. Then she saw the mirror. "Oh my God." She stepped closer, inspecting the sink. "It's fresh," she whispered, "still wet." Jamie nodded. "It's warning him." Michael stared. "Warning me? For what?" Jamie swallowed. "That you're next." They cleaned the mirror, scrubbed every inch, but the scent lingered. No matter how hard they tried, the smell of blood clung to the bathroom like smoke. Jamie sat on the edge of Michael's bed while Lizzie paced. "We need to figure out what's connecting all this," she said. "It's not just about the photo anymore. It's not even about the old victims. It's picking new ones now." Jamie looked at Michael. "You ever see anything before this? Red balloons, voices?" Michael nodded slowly. "A few nights ago I heard something in the closet. Laughing. I thought it was my brother playing a joke. Beuth was asleep. Then this morning." He trailed off. Jamie knew what it meant. It was circling. Not just them, but everyone they loved. Every name connected to their past. Their bloodlines. Their homes. Jamie pulled out the photo again. The clown was gone. But in its place, something else was forming. A list of names. The same jagged handwriting as the bathroom mirror. First, Caleb Myers. Second, Evan Sharp. Third, Michael Dawson. And beneath that, still fading in, Jamie Parker. He stuffed the photo back into his pocket. Lizzie spoke next. "What if we confront it? Force it to show itself again?" Michael shook his head. "Are you insane? It wrote my name in blood." Lizzie turned to Jamie. "It's taunting us, trying to break us apart. We need to stay together." Jamie stood. "We go back, tonight, to where it began." Michael looked horrified. "You mean the sewer?" No, Jamie said. Further, the clearing, the woods, behind the preschool, where Evan appeared. Lizzie nodded. That's where the boundary between here and whatever it is gets thin. Michael hesitated. If I go, it'll come for me. Jamie looked him in the eye. It's already coming. That night, under a cloudy sky, they returned to the woods. Flashlights in hand, crowbars in backpacks. Every sound made them flinch. Rustle of leaves, the creak of a branch. When they reached the clearing, the temperature dropped. Immediately, like stepping into a freezer. The trees loomed larger than usual. The bench Evan had once sat on was gone, burned to ash. Jamie looked around. Something's different. Michael stood near the center, breathing hard. Guys, he said, I think it's watching. Then the fog rolled in. Thick, white, curling up from the ground like smoke. And in it, a balloon. Red, floating. Lizzie gripped Jamie's arm. We're not alone. Then came the whisper. Michael. The voice drifted through the fog like wind. Michael stumbled back. The fog thickened and parted. A figure emerged. It wore Michael's face, but twisted eyes sunken, mouth too wide. It grinned. You left me in the dark, the thing said. Michael screamed and turned to run, but Jamie stopped him. It's not real. The thing lunged mouth open. Jamie swung the crowbar. It passed right through. The figure exploded into black smoke. Then, the ground began to shake, and from beneath the soil, hands, dozens, clawing their way out. Children's hands, some broken, some bleeding, some pulling at Lizzie's ankles, grabbing at Michael's legs. Jamie shouted, Get to the tree. They ran toward the oldest oak in the clearing, where a strange symbol had been carved years ago, a circle with an X through it. Jamie reached it first and pressed his hand against the bark. A shock ran through him. Memories, voices, a chant. We bind it with our blood. He turned. We can trap it again. Lizzie and Michael joined him, pressing their hands to the tree. The ground roared. The hands receded. The fog turned black. Then the clown rose, 30 feet tall, towering over them, wearing a patchwork of children's clothes stitched into its suit. Its eyes glowed like dying stars, and in its mouth rows of teeth spinning like gears. It screamed, a sound like broken glass and thunder. Jamie held up the photo. We remember you. Lizzie shouted, We name you. Michael, with shaking voice, added, We see you. The clown howled in pain. It reached toward them, but the tree burned with light. A circle of fire spread outward, carving a symbol into the dirt. The clown collapsed, shrinking, folding into itself like a puppet with cut strings. Then, silence. The fog cleared, the air warmed, and the clearing was empty again. Later that night, back at Jamie's house, they sat together on the porch. No one spoke for a long time. Michael finally broke the silence. I saw my own face, he whispered, and it hated me. Jamie nodded. It's not just a monster, it's every fear we ever buried. Lizzie added, and it knows all our names. Jamie pulled out the photo one last time. The names were fading. Michael's was nearly gone. So was Evan's. And beneath it all, the clown, curled, trapped. For now, Jamie folded the photo and set it in a small tin box. Then he lit a match. The flames ate it slowly. No screams, no laughter, just ashes. Lizzie whispered, Do you think it's really over? Jamie stared at the embers. No, but I think we've taken back something it never expected. Michael asked, What? Jamie looked up at the stars. Control. The first encounter. The summer sun hung low over the small town of Derry, casting long shadows across cracked sidewalks and overgrown lawns. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass, but beneath the pleasant warmth, a cold dread settled deep in Jamie's chest. He wasn't ready to face the clown again. Not yet, but fate had other plans. It started with a whisper, a soft, eerie voice calling a child's name. Little Mia Dawson was only 8 years old, Jamie's younger cousin, and for days now, she had been complaining of nightmares, dreams where a strange figure lurked just beyond her bedroom window. One night, she told her mother, "The clown is outside. Mom, it wants me to come play." Her mother had dismissed it as just childhood imagination. But when Mia woke in the middle of the night, pale and trembling, clutching her blanket like a lifeline, the warnings could no longer be ignored. Jamie received a frantic call from his aunt. "Mia won't sleep. She's scared to close her eyes." He promised he would come over. Arriving at the Dawson house, Jamie found Mia sitting in her darkened room, her knees drawn to her chest, eyes wide and glassy. "Hey, Mia," Jamie whispered, kneeling beside her. "I'm here now." She nodded, barely speaking. Suddenly, the window behind her rattled as a cold wind blew through the cracks. Jamie glanced over. There, pressed against the glass, was a pale face. No blink, no breath, just a wide, horrifying smile that stretched impossibly from ear to ear. Two yellow eyes glowed, fixed on Mia. It was the clown. Jamie's heart hammered in his chest. "Mia, don't look," he hissed. But the child was frozen, eyes locked on the face outside. Then the clown's mouth moved. "Come play." A red balloon appeared in its other hand, floating just outside the window. Jamie reached for Mia's hand, pulling her away. The clown's smile grew wider to wider, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "It's waiting," it said, "waiting for you to join." Mia whimpered. Jamie felt a chill ripple down his spine. This wasn't just a haunting anymore. It was a hunt. Over the next few nights, Jamie stayed with Mia. He watched as the clown appeared again and again. Always at night. Always just beyond reach. It never tried to come inside. But the cold presence was suffocating. The house's atmosphere shifted. Rooms felt smaller. Shadows deeper. Even the dog refused to enter Mia's room. Jamie knew the clown fed on fear. It thrived on the terror it inspired. But Myash was different. Unlike him or Lizzie, she was innocent, pure, the perfect target. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jamie and Mia sat on the porch swing. "Tell me about the clown," Jamie said gently. Mia shivered. "It has no blink," she said. "Just eyes that stare forever." "And its smile?" Jamie asked. She nodded solemnly. "So big, like it could eat me." Jamie swallowed hard. He remembered the first time he had seen those eyes, and the terrible price it had demanded. Suddenly, the porch light flickered. Jamie stiffened. Mia looked up. There, standing at the edge of the yard, was the clown, its figure distorted by the shadows. It raised a hand, slowly, then dropped a single red balloon onto the grass. Jamie stepped forward. "Go inside," he told Mia. She obeyed silently, eyes wide with fear. Jamie knelt down and picked up the balloon. His fingers brushed the smooth surface. A shiver ran through him. The balloon seemed to pulse with a life of its own. That night, Jamie barely slept. He felt eyes watching him from every dark corner. In his dreams, the clown was always there, waiting, smiling. The next day, Jamie and Lizzie convened at his house. "We have to act fast," Jamie said. Lizzie nodded. "The clown's getting stronger." "We can't let it reach Mia," Jamie added. "She's too young." Lizzie flipped through her notes. "There's an old ritual," she said. "A way to banish spirits like this one." Jamie leaned in. "What is it?" Lizzie hesitated. "It involves confronting the entity, acknowledging its power, and then breaking the hold it has over its victims." Jamie frowned. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," Lizzie said, "but we have no choice." That evening, Jamie returned to Mia's house. He carried a small, worn book Lizzie had lent him. Inside were prayers, incantations, and protective symbols. Mia's room was colder than before. Jamie lit a candle and placed it on the windowsill. "We're going to make it leave," he said softly. Mia nodded. clutching her stuffed bear. The clock struck midnight. The air grew thick. A low hum filled the room. Then, the window rattled violently. The clown appeared. No blink. That terrible smile stretched to its ears. It held out a red balloon. Jamie opened the book. He began to recite the words. By light and shadow, by truth and fear, we call your name and summon you here. No more shadows, no more lies. This night we break your cruel disguise. The clown laughed, a horrible, echoing sound. It is you who feeds me, it said. Jamie continued. Your power ends with this hour. Return to dark, lose your power. The balloon burst. The clown staggered. Its smile faltered. Jamie stepped closer. Leave this child alone. The clown hissed. For a moment, it seemed to shrink, becoming smaller. But then it screamed a sound that ripped through the room. Jamie shielded Mia. When the noise ended, the clown was gone. The window was still. The night was quiet. Mia's breathing slowed. Jamie felt a cautious hope. The next morning, Mia smiled. Real. Whole. Did the clown go away? She asked. Jamie nodded. For now, he said. But it will return. Jamie looked out the window. He saw a red balloon, tied to a tree branch across the street. It swayed gently in the breeze, waiting. He turned away. He knew this was only the first encounter. The battle was far from over. The night air hung heavy with a cold mist as Jamie, Lizzie, and Michael gathered beneath the ancient oak tree in the clearing, behind the old preschool. The place where so many memories, both joyous and horrific, had been buried. Tonight was different. Tonight was a turning point. The red balloon fluttered silently in the branches above, a mocking reminder of what waited for them. The moon barely peeked through the thick canopy of leaves, casting long, flickering shadows over their faces. We have to make this count, Jamie said, voice low but steady. We can't keep running. This thing will never stop. Not until we end it. Lizzie nodded, pulling her jacket tighter around her. We need a pact, a promise, together. No one fights alone. Michael shivered, but met Jamie's gaze without hesitation. Together, or not at all. They had seen the clown's power grow, watched it toy with their fears, and drag their friends closer to the edge. It fed on loneliness, on secrets, on the cracks in their bonds. But if they stood united, maybe they could hold it back. Maybe they could banish it for good. Jamie took a deep breath and pulled from his backpack an old, tattered notebook. It was the same one Lizzie had used to research the occult, filled with symbols, rituals, and warnings about the entity they faced. The final pages detailed a binding ceremony, a pact to unite souls against darkness. This is it, Jamie said. This is how we make the clown pay, or we go down with it. Lizzie pulled out a piece of chalk and began drawing an elaborate circle on the dirt. Strange runes circled around the edges, their meanings lost to all but the most dedicated occultists. The three friends moved closer, forming a triangle within the circle. Michael's hands trembled as he knelt beside Jamie and Lizzie. What if we fail? Lizzie met his eyes. We won't, because we fight together. Jamie pulled out a small, rusted knife and cut the pad of his thumb. Blood welled and dripped onto the circle. Lizzie and Michael followed, pressing their own fingers into the dirt and mixing their blood with the ancient symbols. The earth seemed to hum beneath their touch, the air thickening like the calm before a storm. Jamie recited the words written in the notebook, his voice barely a whisper. Bound by blood, bound by will, we stand as one to break the chill. Darkness flees where light unites. Together we fight, through endless nights. The moment the chant ended, a sudden wind swept through the clearing, snuffing out their small candles. The red balloon floated down from the tree, bobbing in the gust before landing between them. Jamie reached for it but hesitated. The balloon felt heavier now, almost alive, as if it held the breath of something sinister inside. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and from the shadows emerged the clown. Larger and more terrifying than ever, its grin stretched impossibly wide, eyes glowing a deep, malevolent yellow. It stepped forward, the sound of its footsteps echoing like distant thunder. "You think a childish pack can bind me?" the clown hissed, voice dripping with mockery. "You are fools." Lizzie stood firm. "You won't break us." Michael clutched Jamie's arm. "Stay close." The clown circled them slowly, the mist swirling at its feet. It bent down, fingers grazing the chalk circle, which flared with an eerie blue light. "No one escapes," it growled. "We all float down here, together." Jamie steadied his breathing, gripping the knife tightly. The pack was their only hope. But the clown was stronger than they'd ever imagined. Suddenly, the air around the clown shimmered, its form flickered between solid and mist, and the ground beneath them seemed to pulse. The circle of runes began to glow brighter, the binding taking hold. The clown screamed a sound filled with rage and fear. It lunged forward, but invisible barriers pushed it back. Jamie, Lizzie, and Michael stood as one, chanting the words again, their voices growing louder, more confident. The clown thrashed, its form warping and twisting as the light of the pact pressed in on it from all sides. Then, in a sudden burst, the clown vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of ozone and burned rubber. The clearing was silent. The red balloon burst softly, the sound like a sigh. The three friends sank to their knees, exhausted, but victorious at least for now. Lizzie looked at Jamie, her eyes filled with determination. "We made a pact tonight. We'll keep it, no matter what." Michael nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Together." Jamie smiled, the weight on his shoulders feeling lighter for the first time in weeks. "Together." But as they left the clearing, none of them noticed the faint glow beneath the earth's small, red light pulsing in the darkness, promising that the clown's story was far from over. The underground tunnels. The town of Derry had always been full of secrets, whispered stories lurking beneath the surface like shadows waiting to be uncovered. But none was darker or more dangerous than what Jamie, Lizzie, and Michael were about to find. It started with a broken manhole cover. Walking home from school, Michael had spotted it near the old playground, one of the few places still untouched. By the slow decay creeping through the town, the iron lid was twisted and bent, as if something had clawed its way out. It wasn't the kind of damage caused by weather or wear. It was deliberate. Jamie and Lizzie met Michael by the manhole that evening, the sun dipping low behind the houses. The air smelled of rain and earth, heavy with the promise of a storm. "What do you think is down there?" Lizzie asked, shining her flashlight into the darkness. Michael shrugged. "Maybe a sewer tunnel, or an old storm drain. This part of town was built over swamps. There's got to be a whole network of underground tunnels." Jamie studied the gaping hole. "We've been chasing the clown on the surface for weeks. What if it's been hiding down there all along?" Lizzie swallowed hard. "If that's true, we have to find out." Without hesitation, Jamie lowered himself carefully into the tunnel, the cold air hitting his face like a wall. The metal ladder was slick with rust, groaning under his weight. Below, the tunnel stretched out in both directions, damp concrete walls stained with decades of water damage. The scent of mold and something more sinister lingered in the stale air. "Come on down," Jamie called, voice echoing. Lizzie and Michael joined him, one after the other, their footsteps splashing softly in the shallow water pooling on the floor. They switched on their flashlights, beams cutting through the darkness, revealing graffiti-covered walls, abandoned pipes, and old, rusted carts, remnants of a long-forgotten past. "Look at this," Lizzie said, pointing at a series of strange symbols scratched into the concrete. "These match the ones from the ritual circle." Michael ran his fingers over them. "Someone's been down here before." Jamie nodded slowly. "Maybe the clown's lair." They moved cautiously, senses on high alert, every drip of water every creak of metal, made their hearts race. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending deeper beneath the town. After nearly half an hour of walking, they reached a large chamber. It was enormous, vaulted ceilings dripping with moisture, walls covered in faded murals that told dark stories of fear and despair. In the center, a rusted iron gate blocked the way forward. Jamie tried the lock. It was old but sturdy. Lizzie examined the gate closely. "Look, there's a latch here." With a concerted effort, they pushed the gate open. A foul stench spilled out, a mix of rot and something metallic. Beyond was a labyrinth of smaller tunnels, carved deep into the earth. "We're inside," Jamie said, voice tight with emotion. They stepped through, following the faintest traces of footsteps etched into the dirt floor. The further they went, the heavier the air became. And then they saw it, a room almost like a shrine. Candles, long since burnt down to stubs, lay scattered on the floor. Scrawled messages covered the walls, words like "Remember, we float," and "Never forget." In the corner, a battered old tricycle sat untouched, its red paint chipped and faded. Jamie felt a cold shiver run down his spine. "This was where the clown stayed," Lizzie whispered. Michael crouched beside the tricycle, running his hand over the worn seat. "Someone left this here," he said quietly. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled. A low, guttural growl echoed through the tunnels. The flashlight beams flickered wildly, and then darkness. Jamie cursed under his breath. The light went out. For a terrifying moment, they were blind. Lizzie scrambled for her spare battery, but the darkness felt Oliva closing in, suffocating. Then, from the shadows, a faint glow appeared. It was a red balloon, floating slowly toward them. The unmistakable grin appeared, hollow eyes glowing with malevolence. "It's here," Jamie said, voice barely a whisper. The clown's voice echoed around them. "You think you can trap me? I've waited here for decades." "Why?" Michael demanded. The clown laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Because I feed on fear, on forgotten promises, on children lost and left behind." Jamie clenched his fists. "We remember now. We won't let you take anyone else." The clown snarled. The walls of the tunnels seemed to close in. Branches of shadow stretched out like fingers, grabbing at their clothes. Lizzie pulled Jamie back. "Run." They sprinted through the winding tunnels, heartbeat pounding in their ears. Branches lashed out, scraping skin and tearing fabric. The red balloon floated after them, pulsing with light. Suddenly, a passageway opened. Jamie pushed through. Light flooded the space. They emerged into an old sewer chamber. At the center stood a statue of a clown, twisted, grotesque, grinning with hollow eyes. It was the heart of the lair. Jamie stepped forward. "This ends tonight." He raised the small tin boxed one that had held the photo. The box began to glow softly. The clown's laughter turned into a screech. The statue cracked. Pieces crumbled away. The red balloon burst. Light filled the chamber. The clown's scream then vanished. Silence. They looked at each other. "We did it," Lizzie said breathlessly. But Jamie shook his head. This was just the start. He looked at the empty tunnels behind them. The clown was ancient, powerful, and the tunnels stretched on, deeper, forever. The illusions, the chill that gripped Jamie's heart was not just from the damp tunnels or the eerie silence that followed the clown's disappearance. It was something deeper, a creeping dread that the battle was far from over. The clown was cunning, ancient, and merciless. If the tunnels were its lair, then it had many weapons to wield against them. Its deadliest, illusions. In the days after their escape from the underground lair, Jamie, Lizzie, and Michael tried to hold onto normalcy. But the clown's grip tightened, attacking them where they were most vulnerable in their minds. Each of them began to experience visions, terrible, vivid hallucinations that clawed into their deepest fears. Jamie's first illusion came on a quiet afternoon while he sat alone in his room, trying to sketch the old notebook's symbols. His hand trembled as the walls seemed to pulse and breathe. Suddenly, the room shifted. The ceiling stretched upward, cracking open to reveal a dark, swirling sky filled with thousands of red balloons floating silently. His mother's voice echoed from the hallway, soft and pleading. "Jamie, come downstairs. There's someone here." He rose and stepped out, but the house warped around him. The walls twisted and bent, turning into grotesque faces screaming silently. The floors rippled like water beneath his feet. He reached the living room. There, on the couch, sat his mother, but her eyes were black pits. Her mouth stretched wide in a grotesque smile. "Why won't you save me?" she whispered, voice a rasp. Jamie tried to speak, but his tongue felt heavy, numb. The illusion darkened, swallowing him whole. He jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The room was normal. His mother was safely at work, but the terror lingered. Lizzie wasn't spared either. One evening, as she walked home through the fog-draped streets, the mist thickened unnaturally. The streetlights flickered out one by one, plunging her into darkness. Shapes loomed out of the fog, shadows of friends lost to the clown's curse. They reached for her, their eyes hollow and accusing. "You abandoned us," they hissed. Her heart pounded. She ran, but the streets twisted and lengthened endlessly. Every alley she turned down led her back to the same place, a graveyard filled with unmarked stones and fresh dirt. At the center lay a coffin with her name etched on it. Hands clawed at the earth, desperate to pull her in. She screamed, awakening on her porch, the fog still swirling around her feet. Michael's nightmare was no less cruel. In his dreams, he found himself trapped inside the old preschool, the very place where the clown had first appeared. The walls dripped with blood. The playground was a twisted carnival of horror's swings bent into grotesque shapes, merry-go-rounds spinning wildly on their own. He saw himself as a child, lost and alone, crying for help no one heard. Then the clown appeared, towering and monstrous. It bent down, whispering, "You'll never escape me." Michael tried to run, but the floor turned into sticky black tar, pulling him down. He awoke gasping, hands shaking uncontrollably. The illusions weren't random. Each was tailored to break their spirits, to make them question reality, and to isolate them. Jamie knew they had to resist or risk being consumed. He called Lizzie and Michael to a meeting at his house, determined to confront the mental assault. They sat together, sharing their visions, realizing the clown was exploiting their deepest fears. "We can't let it win," Jamie said firmly. Lizzie nodded. "But how do we fight something that's not really there?" Michael's voice was hesitant. "What if we face the illusions together?" Jamie smiled grimly. "Exactly. We need to break the cycle." That night, they prepared. Using the notebook's guidance, they designed a ritual to protect their minds. They drew protective symbols on their wrists and around the room. Candles flickered, casting dancing shadows as they held hands and focused on grounding themselves in reality. Jamie spoke aloud, "We know you are but shadows and fear. Your illusions have no power here." The room hummed with energy. Suddenly, the walls began to warp. The illusions came crashing down the faces, the shadows, the twisted playground. But this time, the trio faced them as one. They called out each vision's lie. Jamie's voice echoed, "You are not my mother's voice. You are the clown's trick." Lizzie shouted, "I will not abandon my friends." Michael screamed, "I will escape this nightmare." The illusions shattered like glass. A cold wind swept through the room. Exhausted but victorious, they realized the battle was shifting. The clown's power was strongest when they were alone, but united, they could break through the darkness. Still, Jamie knew this was not the end. The clown's illusions were only the beginning of a deeper, more terrifying war. To face the clown and its horrors together, no matter what. The sacrifice. The days grew darker in Derry, not just in the sky but in the air itself. It was as though the very soul of the town was beginning to rot. The streets felt emptier, colder, and time seemed to stretch unnaturally. Jamie, Lizzie, and Michael had fought the illusions, resisted the clown's psychological attacks, and survived more than most ever could. But they all knew the final confrontation was coming, and not all of them would walk away. It started with the map. Jamie had been poring over the symbols in Lizzie's notebook again, tracing the tunnels beneath Derry. A particular set of runes had caught his attention, a geometric spiral marked as the core. It was a place never referenced before, a location buried even deeper than the lair they had escaped. "I think this is where it lives," Jamie said, pointing at the spiral. "Its real body, its true form." Lizzie leaned in. "We sealed its illusions, but if we want to destroy it, we have to go to its heart." Michael, pale, gave a quiet nod. "Then we finish this tonight." That evening, they returned to the broken manhole cover, the gateway to the tunnels. This time, they carried more than flashlights and courage. They brought a plan. They descended into the dark, the echoes of dripping water guiding them deeper into the labyrinth of fear. The walls seemed to breathe, contracting like lungs. Their flashlights flickered, the air growing colder with every step. Then they saw it. A door, not made of wood or steel, but of flesh, pulsating and veined like a living membrane. Jamie stepped forward. "It's guarding the core." Lizzie handed him a small blade etched with runes, the sacrificial dagger they'd found in the town archives, hidden in a sealed crate from 1952. It had been used before, according to legend, to seal the clown away when it last rose. They didn't know how the sealing worked, but it involved blood and choice. Jamie hesitated only a second, then stabbed the fleshy door. It shrieked, not in pain, but in recognition. It peeled back, folding into itself. A blast of heat and wind met them. They stepped into a colossal underground chamber. The core, massive and pulsating with a strange red light. It was a cavern filled with bones, rusted toys, and shattered memories. At the center stood the clown, larger than any nightmare, its arms elongated, fingers twisted into blades, and its grin stretched wider than its face should allow. "You've come," it hissed, voice layered in tones: child, adult, animal, demon. Jamie stood tall. "We're ending this." The clown laughed, a sound like broken glass. "You can try," it whispered, "but one of you will stay." With a motion of its hand, the chamber shifted. The ground cracked open, and from the depths emerged ghostly figures, children the clown had claimed. Their eyes were hollow, their hands trembling. Among them, Jamie saw a face he recognized. Evan, his friend, his brother, his failure. Evan reached out. "I don't want to be here." Jamie stepped forward, heartbreaking, but Michael grabbed his arm. "It's a trap," he warned. The clown grinned. "Only blood seals the door," it whispered. "Only a soul can pay the price." Suddenly, the walls began to close in. The chamber trembled, and the air grew hot. The clown advanced. Jamie turned to his friends. "We have to destroy the core." "But how?" Lizzie yelled, shielding her eyes from the light. Jamie looked at the dagger. "This blade, it's the key." Michael stared at it, then at the clown, then at Jamie. "I'll do it," he said. Jamie's eyes widened. "What?" Michael stepped forward, firm. "I've been the weak one this whole time, running, crying, but I'm not afraid anymore." He took the dagger. "No," Lizzie cried, grabbing his shoulder. Michael smiled sadly. "You saved my life more than once. Let me return the favor." Jamie's throat tightened. "Michael, don't." But Michael had already turned toward the core. The clown lunged, screaming. Michael sprinted, dodging its claws, leaping across bones and rubble. He reached the core and plunged the dagger deep into its pulsing mass. The scream that followed shook the earth. The core convulsed, pulsing in agony. The clown howled, its form beginning to unravel. Michael turned to look at Jamie and Lizzie. "Tell my brother I love him," he said. Then the core exploded in light. Blinding, absolute. When Jamie awoke, he was lying on the grass behind the old preschool. Dawn was breaking, and the world was silent. Lizzie sat beside him, eyes swollen with tears. "Michael," Jamie whispered. She shook her head. "Gone. No body. No sign. Just silence." They rose slowly. All around them, the air felt lighter. The curse had broken. The clown was gone. But so was Michael. They stood in silence for a long time. Then Jamie reached into his jacket pocket. The notebook now blank. Every page wiped clean. The story had ended. Days passed. The town slowly returned to normal. Children laughed again. The red balloons vanished. The shadows receded. Jamie visited Michael's house. His little brother, Timmy, sat on the porch, kicking a ball. "He told me you'd come," Timmy said. Jamie froze. "Who?" "Michael," Timmy replied. "He came in a dream." He said, "Tell Jamie I'm okay. I'm free now." Jamie felt tears rise but didn't let them fall. He nodded, smiling faintly. "Thank you." Weeks later, Jamie returned to the clearing one last time. Alone, he placed a small stone in the center of the circle. On it, he had carved, "Michael Dawson, the one who chose." The wind stirred gently, and somewhere, faintly, a balloon popped. Jamie smiled. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't afraid. The return of the red balloon. The nightmares had stopped. For a while, at least. Weeks passed since the core was destroyed, and the ancient clown was banished in the flash of light and sacrifice. Michael's name was etched into more than stone, now it echoed in memory. In the silence of rooms once filled with dread, Jamie and Lizzie had returned to something like normal life, though nothing would ever be the same. Until the balloon came back. It was a Tuesday morning. Ordinary. The sun broke through the clouds after a weekend of storms. Jamie stepped out onto his porch, sipping coffee, blinking sleep from his eyes. At first, he thought he imagined it. But there it was, floating. A single red balloon, tied to the gatepost, swaying gently in the breeze that wasn't blowing. His mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the concrete. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Not until Lizzie called. "Did you see it too?" she asked, voice hollow. "Yes," Jamie whispered. "It's back." They met at the clearing where Michael had made his final stand. Jamie approached first, eyes scanning the space. Nothing but trees and silence. Lizzie arrived minutes later, her expression pale and drawn. "He's supposed to be gone," she said. "I know." And yet she gestured to the notebook in Jamie's hands. It was no longer blank. Symbols had begun to reappear. Rough, uneven, scrawled like claw marks. Lizzie took it and flipped to the newest page. There was no mistaking what it showed. A red balloon. Below it, one line had been written in crimson ink. "He who floats once always floats again." Jamie clenched his jaw. "This can't be real. The core was destroyed. We saw it. But the tunnels are older than the core," Lizzie murmured. "What if we only severed one piece of it?" Jamie looked up sharply. "You think part of it survived?" Lizzie didn't answer. She didn't need to. The balloon had returned. That meant something had, too. The next day, news of a missing child spread through Derry like wildfire. Tyler Mason, age 7. Last seen walking home from the library. His parents swore he was only gone 5 minutes. They turned a corner. He vanished. And at the corner where he was last seen, another red balloon floated, tied to a street lamp, mocking them. Jamie and Lizzie stood there together, watching it spin. "Same pattern," Lizzie said quietly. "Same signs." Jamie nodded. "It's starting again." He reached into his bag and pulled out a walkie-talkie. Not a modern one. An old, clunky model Michael had given him a year ago. "I think it's time we called in help." Lizzie raised an eyebrow. "Who would believe us now?" "Not the police," Jamie said. He turned the dial, searching for the old frequency. A crackle, a burst of static. Then, a voice. "Hello." Jamie blinked. "Evan." Silence. Then, "Jamie, is that you?" Evan Sharp had disappeared months before, taken by the clown during one of its earliest attacks. They had mourned him, buried him in their hearts. Now, somehow, he was talking to them. "You're alive?" Jamie asked, heart pounding. "Not exactly," Evan's voice said through the static. "I'm stuck, in between." Lizzie grabbed the device. "Evan, where are you?" "I don't know," he answered. "But I see the clown. I see where it hides now. The balloons, they mark the cracks. It's not dead, just buried deeper." Jamie asked, "Can we reach you?" "Maybe," Evan said, "but not alone. You need the fourth." "The fourth?" Jamie repeated. "Yes," Evan said. "The fourth one. The one who was always watching." The radio cut out. Silence again. Jamie lowered the device. "The fourth," Lizzie repeated. "What does that mean?" "I don't know," Jamie said, "but we're going to find out." That night, Jamie returned home to find a letter on his desk. No stamp, no handwriting, just a folded paper. Inside was a single photo. For children standing in front of a carnival tent. 3 of them he knew himself, Lizzie and Michael. The fourth stood slightly behind the others. Face blurred, unclear. On the back of the photo were 5 words. "He still remembers the promise." Jamie stared at the photo for a long time. Then it clicked. There was another kid, he whispered. They spent the next day searching through old school yearbooks, local forums, and social media. Hours of scrolling and comparing. Finally, a name emerged. Thomas Reed. He had been in Jamie's class for a single year before moving away. Quiet, nervous, barely spoke to anyone. But Jamie remembered now Thomas was there the night of the carnival. He had been the one who begged them not to go into the tunnel of mirrors. He had known, and they hadn't listened. Jamie called every number he could find, left voicemails on old contacts. Finally, a voice picked up. "Hello, Thomas. Who is this?" "It's Jamie, from Derry." Silence. "Then it's happening again, isn't it?" Jamie's throat tightened. "You remember?" "Of course I remember," Thomas said. "I've never stopped remembering." "Then we need you," Jamie said. "We can't end it without the fourth." "I made a promise," Thomas said. Then he hung up. 2 days later, Thomas Reed stepped off a Greyhound bus into the heart of Derry. He looked different, older, sharper, eyes colder. But underneath it, the fear still lingered. Jamie greeted him with a nod. "Welcome back. I said I'd never return here," Thomas said. "But I saw the red balloon outside my apartment in Boston. I knew the moment had come." Lizzie hugged him. "We're glad you're here." They brought him up to speed. Evan's voice, the notebook's reactivation, the missing boy, the fourth child, the promise. Thomas said little, just listened, then finally nodded. "If Evan's trapped, we need to find the threshold between here and wherever he is." Jamie pulled out the map again, now marked with red ink where each balloon had appeared. When connected, the points formed a perfect spiral, like the symbol for the core, but inverted. "It's a gate," Thomas said, "an opening." Jamie looked up. To what? Thomas looked toward the horizon, to where it hides now. That night, they returned to the place where Tyler had vanished. The balloon was gone, but a trail of chalk arrows led into an alley. They followed them, down a staircase, through a rusted door, into a tunnel. Different than the sewers, this one was clean, newer, recently used. At the end, a mirror stood, full length, framed in gold. Thomas stepped up first, and the mirror rippled. Then it pulled him in. "Thomas!" Lizzie screamed. Jamie didn't hesitate. He leapt forward, and was gone. Lizzie followed. They landed in a world of reflections, an endless hallway of mirrors stretching into infinity. Each mirror showed not their faces but memories, fearful moments, regrets, loss. Jamie saw his mother crying after his father left. Lizzie saw the day her brother died in a crash. Thomas saw himself alone at a cafeteria table. But they kept walking, deeper, until they reached the center, a mirror larger than the rest, and inside it, Evan, pale, trapped, eyes filled with pain. "Help me," he whispered. They reached for him. The mirror pulsed. The clown appeared behind Evan laughing, its face twisted with scars, its body less real, now more mist than flesh. "You brought the fourth," it hissed. "So now, you may try." Jamie looked at the others. "We finished this." And they stepped into the mirror. The return promise. The mirror shattered behind them. The sound echoed through the void like thunder rolling through a hollow sky. Evan collapsed forward, landing in Jamie's arms. For a moment, the four of them just stood there, Jamie, Lizzie, Thomas, and Evan, breathing hard, covered in dust, glass, and fear. But the chamber was still. The mirrors were gone. The clown was gone. And for the first time in what felt like forever, silence felt safe. "It's over," Lizzie said softly. Evan, weak but alive, gave a faint smile. "I thought I'd never leave that place." Thomas nodded, kneeling beside him. "You held on. That's all that matters." They helped Evan to his feet, limping out through the shattered remains of the mirror maze. No longer a place of illusion and fear. It was just a crumbling space beneath the town. Dusty, empty, harmless. They emerged through the alley, the morning sun just beginning to break over Derry. The town looked different now, not just in the light, but in the energy. The stillness was no longer haunted. The streets no longer whispered. The red balloons were gone. Gone like the nightmare. Gone like the clown. Gone like the promise of death that had loomed over them since childhood. They took Evan to Jamie's house. Lizzie wrapped his hand where glass had cut him. Thomas sat at the window, staring outside, watching birds scatter in the rising sun. "No one will believe any of this," Evan said. Jamie laughed. "They never did." "But we know," Lizzie said. "That's enough." They stayed silent for a while. Not because there was nothing to say, but because too much had happened for words to carry it. Then Evan turned toward Jamie. "You saw it too, right? When we were inside the final mirror." Jamie hesitated. The version of it, the way it kept shifting? "No," Evan said. "The wall behind it." Jamie blinked. "What wall?" Evan looked pale now, paler than before. There was a wall behind the clown, just for a second. Covered in tally marks, thousands, maybe more. Lizzie stopped wrapping the bandage. "What do you think they were?" she asked. Evan looked down. I think each mark was a time it had returned. A time someone forgot." Thomas stood suddenly, the chair scraping behind him. "No," he muttered. "No more of this." Jamie turned to him. "Thomas." But Thomas shook his head. "We did our part. We saved Evan. We broke the mirrors. We ended the spiral." He was right. They'd seen the clown burn. They'd seen the illusions collapse. They had watched its last form dissipate in light. There was nothing left. Right. A week passed. Then two. The town felt normal again. Kids returned to school. Parents smiled in grocery store lines. No one mentioned red balloons. No one remembered missing children. Not even Tyler Mason. Jamie asked a neighbor about him once, and the man simply blinked and said, "Who?" It was as if the child had never existed. Lizzie tried to find his photo in the local paper's archives. Gone. Deleted. As if the clown had taken more than lives, it had erased memories. Thomas prepared to leave town again. He didn't say much about where he was going. "Somewhere quieter," he said. But on the day he left, he handed Jamie a folded piece of paper. "You should keep this," Thomas said. "You'll know why someday." Jamie waited until the bus pulled away before unfolding it. Inside was the carnival photo. The same for children. But this time, the blurred face of the fourth child, Thomas, was clear. And behind them, in the distance, a clown face on a banner, barely visible, faded, smiling. On the 15th morning since the final mirror shattered, Jamie sat alone in his room. It was raining, the soft kind, the kind that taps gently on windows and makes the world feel paused. He flipped through the notebook again. Blank, just like after Michael's sacrifice. He closed it and turned toward the window. That's when he saw it. A piece of paper, floating, gently, on the breeze. It slipped through the crack in the open window and landed on his desk. No wind followed it, just silence. Jamie stared at it for a moment. His hands trembled as he picked it up. There were only 10 words, scrawled in red ink, the handwriting shaky and sharp. See you again, when you forget me once more. Jamie dropped the paper as if it burned. His chest tightened. His mind spun. No, he said aloud, we ended this. But he couldn't deny the chill crawling down his spine. He ran to the closet, pulling out the notebook again. Still blank. Then he noticed the back cover, something scratched into the leather that hadn't been there before. A small balloon, drawn in red. Jamie didn't sleep that night. Neither did Lizzie. When he called her, she whispered, I got the same paper. They met at the clearing again, standing beneath the old tree. This is impossible, Lizzie said, her voice quiet. Jamie shook his head. Or inevitable. Do you think Thomas? I think Thomas knew this would happen, Jamie said. Lizzie looked up at the sky. So what do we do now? Jamie clenched his fists. We remember, that's how it starts again. People forget. We forget. And it feeds on that silence. He looked at her with fierce determination. If the clown returns, when we forget, then we make sure no one ever does. That night, Jamie created a digital journal. He wrote down everything. Every face, every tunnel, every scream, every red balloon. He uploaded the story, encrypted it, then backed it up to cloud servers and USB drives. He left copies in public forums, buried it in obscure blogs, even printed hard copies and mailed them to libraries across the state. He didn't care if people thought it was fiction. He just needed them to remember, to never let it fade. Lizzie did the same in drawings, in song lyrics, in coded journals. They both began to spread stories of the clown in Derry, as a myth, as a warning. They even wrote the name on the back of street signs. He floats again. It wasn't about scaring people. It was about preserving truth. Because now they knew. The clown didn't die. It slept. And it only ever needed time to be forgotten. Time to be invited back by silence. Time to return. Months passed. The seasons changed. Life, despite everything, moved forward. Jamie walked through the town square one crisp autumn morning, hands stuffed in his coat pockets. Children played in the park. Old folks chatted on benches. For a while, things felt light, peaceful, hopeful. Then he saw it, tied to the gate of the old library. A single red balloon. No string, no wind, no child nearby. Just floating there, silent, waiting. Jamie didn't panic. He didn't scream. He walked up to it, stared at it for a long time. Then, without touching it, he pulled out a marker and wrote 2 words on the wall next to it. We remember. The balloon shivered, then popped,